They knew what they were doing, and yet they continued, testing, pushing, measuring how much someone could take before walking away. Games, silences, calculated absences. It was as if they wanted to be sure. Will this person really leave someday? They did, but by the time they realized it, there was no one left to witness, because no one stays where they are challenged instead of embraced. At first, there was still presence. There was still care, effort, commitment, but none of that was respected. They chose to take the risk. They believed there would always be one more chance, one more wait, one more forgiveness, one more return. But the day came when none of that materialized. No demands, no explanations, no drama, just silence. That silence that isn't punishment, it's a conclusion. When the one who was there disappears, they don't scream. They don't make a fuss. They don't try to prove anything. They simply go, because they understand that insisting where there is disdain is abandoning oneself. And there the game changed. The one who tested lost. The one who thought they were indispensable fell behind. Those who trusted too much in someone else's patience underestimated the other's courage to walk away. What do you do now with this absence? With this void that no one else fills? With this presence that can't be found anywhere? Some losses are permanent, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. Have you ever been someone that the other thought wouldn't leave? They knew what they were doing. It wasn't innocence. It wasn't distraction. It wasn't chance. It was intentional. Measured pauses, short responses, strategic disappearances, silent tests, as if observing from afar how much the other can take. And for some reason only this person knows, they thought they had all the time in the world to play with your patience. They thought the heart could withstand one more absence, one more day without a response, one more night waiting for a sign that never came. They thought affection was something flexible, that respect could be postponed. The care was something that was demanded, not something that was deserved. And then came the mistake, testing the limits of someone who had already given everything. No one notices right away, because those who feel deeply take time to realize. It takes time to accept that they are being used as a measure of someone else's ego, but awareness arrives, slowly at first. Then, like an avalanche that shatters any illusion, one begins to see the pattern, the manipulation disguised as indifference, the disdain disguised as space, the disinterest masked as a phase. Gradually, the body starts to react. Emotional exhaustion transforms into physical weariness. The heart slows down. The wait loses its meaning. No shouting, no crisis, no spectacle. Just a stark end, clear, internal. And then it's over. Not out of pride, but because the road has come to an end. Because even the strongest can fall apart. Even the most loving can give up. And what's most frightening for those who always tested is discovering they've lost without warning, that there was no fight, that there was no farewell, that everything they had is no longer there, and the silence begins to disturb. The same silence that was once used as a weapon now becomes a sentence. That's when the realization hits. Too late. Because those who tested incorrectly. Those who bet that the other person would endure everything did not understand the essential truth. Patience has limits. Commitment has an expiration date. Love does not survive continuous disregard. It hurts, yes, but not in the way one might think. It's not nostalgia that hurts. It's the weight of realizing how much was given to someone who never truly wanted to receive. Someone who didn't want a relationship. They wanted control. They wanted to see how far the presence would last, even when ignored. And it didn't last. Because no one is infinite. No one is made to serve as an emotional laboratory. There comes a point where everything becomes a memory, where everything that seemed unconditional turns into silence, where all the insistence becomes an end. Do you know what troubles someone who loses this way the most? It's not knowing the exact moment they lost. It's realizing there wasn't a last chance, that there was no plea of, please stay, because there was no room for that. The decision had already been made long before the absence was noticed. And that is the real punishment for those who play with others' patience. The moment when the other person is no longer there. For real. Absence becomes presence, lack becomes a mirror, and silence becomes a response. Maybe now there will be an attempt to reconnect, with apologies, with justifications, with cold attempts to revive something that has already died. But there is no returning where emotional death has occurred. When the heart closes, it's not out of pouting, it's out of necessity, and it closes completely, not because love ceased to exist, but because it realized that loving alone is self-abandonment, and there's no possible return after that, because pain ceased to be a lament. It became a lesson. It became a criterion. It became a limit. The perception is now different, sharper, more selective, more aware. No more crumbs will be accepted. What once moved you no longer seems beautiful. No more expectations from those who have proven they cannot deliver. And this, nobody who tested their limits expected. Expected tears, expected pleas, expected drama, did not expect such a complete silence, such a light absence, such a definitive liberation. The person who wanted to measure your endurance now feels their own despair, because losing someone you still loved hurts. But losing someone who has given up creates emptiness. No living memories, no access, no way back. Because where there was no value, now there is emptiness. And if there's still doubt, yes, you were someone the other thought wouldn't leave. They thought you would withstand everything, that you would endure even the scorn, that you would always come back. But you left, and what was left behind now looks towards what will not be touched again, because they lost themselves in the game they created, and that cannot be undone, cannot be rebuilt, cannot be repeated. If this resonated with you in some way, comment, "I needed to hear this." Have you ever been through this? Tell me in the comments. When someone disappears from within, the body may still be there, but there is no one left. And that's what hurts the most for those who believed they were in control, thinking there's still time when everything inside is already over. Because the presence that truly surrenders doesn't give notice when it leaves. It goes in the middle of the day. It goes quietly. It leaves while still smiling on the outside. And no one notices. People believe that the other is still there. But what's left is just the shell, just the reflection of what once was. Meanwhile, on the inside, a new person is born. One who has already understood the game. One who has looked into the eyes of need and chose to step out of the waiting line. There's no going back after this, because the heart that once cried for attention and was not heard no longer begs. It no longer stoops. It does not offer what was not valued before. This is what eats away at those who lose. The knowledge that the other left while no one was watching. And now, when nothing said can undo that absence, you can write texts, you can send messages, you can try to explain, you can swear you understood, but there's no longer a receiver. There's no more space, because everything the other wanted to hear was exactly what was ignored. And now? Now it's time to face what was provoked, to deal with the absence that echoes, with the emptiness that responds, with the shadow of what was had and wasted. This is the harsh truth that few want to face. Those who play with another's feelings don't just lose affection, they lose the energetic presence of someone who was whole. Do you see the difference? It's not just the body, it's the energy, the intention, the commitment. Everything is gone, and it takes with it what was most rare, the availability of someone who still believed. Do you know what hurts the most at this moment? The late recognition, the famous, "Now I understand," but understanding later doesn't return anything, because there's no reward for those who only value after destroying. Those who cause a slow and cruel distancing cannot be surprised when the other doesn't even want to talk anymore, because the cruelest part isn't losing the other, it's losing the right to try to recover. Now the real silence begins. The one who doesn't respond, doesn't accuse, doesn't want to know anymore. And those who tried to manipulate with coldness feel firsthand what it's like to be ignored with clarity, because there's an abyss between emotional absence and genuine indifference. The former is used as a tool of power. The latter is a state of someone who no longer sees the point, and that's where the irreversible wound lies. At the moment when the other person simply feels nothing anymore, the greatest pain isn't loss. It's knowing that the other, even after leaving, was still willing to try, to talk, to fix things. But you didn't want that. You wanted to test, to measure, to manipulate, and now there's nothing left to seek. Now, what happened has already been lost in the passage of time. And what could have once been salvation is now just a memory that burns. Have you ever been through this? Ever left a place where you still wanted to stay, but were forced to go due to a lack of reciprocity? Comment here, I needed to hear this, or just write yes one if you don't want to explain. But don't ignore what you felt reading this. Don't bury what's trying to come out. After the departure, what follows isn't immediate relief. It's a strange pause, an empty space where there used to be expectation. You don't feel victory. You don't feel revenge. There's none of that feeling many imagine of having gotten back at someone, because it's not that. It never was about that. It's about finally realizing that you deserve so much more. That's where the liberation begins. But it's also where the discomfort lives. Because, at first, there's too much silence. It takes time to get used to the absence of hope. It takes time to stop checking your phone on autopilot. It takes time to stop imagining how things could have been if the person had acted differently. It takes time to accept that this story was never about reciprocity. It was about someone always trying to keep something alive alone. And that slowly kills. It suffocates little by little. Wears you down as if each day steals a piece of your shine. But after a while, one day arrives, and on that day you no longer feel the absence, you realize it. It's as simple as that. There's no snap. There's no explosion. There's no ritual. Just a moment when the person's name no longer stirs feelings. When the music doesn't cut anymore. When the memory doesn't weigh heavy. That's when you understand they are gone. For real. Inside and out. There's no more energetic bond. No more hidden desire for the other to come back. There's nothing left to wait for. It's just a new life. Simple, silent, solid. Meanwhile, on the other side, someone is trying to understand why everything has grown so cold. Why the tone changed. Why the response was stiff. Why the gaze no longer sparkles. But the time to explain has passed. The time to try to fix things is over. Now everything is a matter of consequence. And those who tried to gauge how far you would go find themselves trapped in their own snare. That illusion that there would be time, that all it would take is a call, a text, a fake apology. But it no longer works, because the other is not the same anymore. When you break inside, nothing that comes from outside holds power. That's when a new version of yourself is born. More grounded, more clear, more selective, not because you hardened, but because you understood. That there are places that don't deserve a return. That there are people who only teach through losing, and some learn too late. It's at this point that the game changes. But it's no longer a game. Those who try to control now feel the weight of genuine disdain. Not the theatrical disdain full of hints and blocks, but the silent disdain, the one that doesn't respond, the one that doesn't care, the one that simply doesn't feel. This is what hurts the most for those who thought they had someone in the palm of their hand, to discover they lost their place in someone else's heart, without even being able to ask for one last chance. Can you see what happened there? How everything turned upside down, but without shouting, without drama, without slamming doors. Just an absence that no one knew how to interpret. And now, all that's left for the one who lost is to live with what will never return. That sweet version, patient, what I expected, what I accepted, what I always gave one more chance. This was buried in the same place where perception was born. And if you feel that you've gone through this, or are going through this, comment I needed to hear this. Or tell me, when was the first time you realized there was no turning back? Right here. Not to be heard, but to hear yourself. When healing comes, it doesn't come with a celebration. It comes with silence, with clarity, with a sense of lightness. It no longer hurts. It no longer pulses. It no longer stirs anything inside. And maybe precisely because of that, it's so definitive, because there is no longer any intention of returning. There is no more anger, just indifference. There is no desire to prove anything to anyone. What was lived simply ceased to matter, and then you realize the hardest and most liberating truth. The person who gave the most was the one who was seen the least. The one who tried the hardest was the one who was tested the most. The one who loved the most was the one who had to leave the most. And now, who was once certainty becomes the past. Who had your presence as something guaranteed today doesn't know where to start a conversation because they lost. And the worst part? They lost by choice. They chose to test you, they chose silence, they chose the ego, and now they have to live with the echo of their own neglect. There is nothing crueler than realizing too late the value of what was taken for granted. But that's it. The end. No going back, no drama, no longing, just perception. If this video resonated with you on some level, give it a like now. It's the simplest way to say that this made sense to me. If you want more people to experience this awakening, share it with someone who needs to read this today. It could be exactly what that person hasn't had the courage to say out loud. And tell me, what was the moment you realized it was time to walk away? Write in the comments. It doesn't matter if it was years ago or just yesterday. Sharing your perception could open someone else's eyes who hasn't seen it yet. And if you made it this far, subscribe to the channel now. This space is for those who feel, for those who are tired, for those who can't stand shallow relationships anymore. Here, each video is a mirror. If this video made you think, the next one is going to turn you inside out. Go ahead.